Hello there, delegates, and welcome back to the main stage. I hope you enjoyed those breakout sessions, and it's now time for our popular Spotlight on CRNS members session, this time entitled Helping to Make the World Greener, with two speakers, and then that will be followed by a Q&A session as part of this. So again, please type some questions in that chat box as we're going along. And we're going to start this session with Neil Mapes, who's joining us from a beautiful part of Scotland, the glorious Moray Coast. Neil is manager of Green Hive, helping Nairn's community and environment. So it's over to you, Neil.
Hi everybody, I'm Neil Mapes. I'm the manager of Green Hive. We're an environmental charity based in Nairn, supporting the local community to take positive action to address some of the global challenges which Doug Allen so beautifully illustrated in his presentation. Thank you, Heather. Thank you to CRNS for the opportunity to be in this spotlight. It's going to be a whistle-stop tour of our activities, of our people and of our places in Nairn, and some of our activities, which can be broadly, sorry, the slides just need to click through there. The slides not working at the moment. There we are. The activities that we do are broadly in three categories: environmental projects such as beach and litter picks, as well as economy or enterprise projects such as our hub, which I'll introduce you to, as well as infrastructure projects such as e-bikes. We received the first e-bike recently at Green Hive. So for those folks that don't know this part of the world, this is the coastline in Nairn. We're a small team. There's just three of us, supported by Simon and a wonderful group of trustees on the board. But we've got a collective ambition to grow and to do more. And this is Andy, Caroline, and I in the workshop with our first plastics products, which we'll tell you a little bit more about. But the Green Hive Community Workshop Hub has been initially focused on plastics. And the idea for the workshop came from our volunteers in the community, and these are some of the folks proudly standing with our first products outside the workshop. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. Historically, we've done group activities focused on improving the environment. Pre-COVID, of course, this would involve group activities such as invasive species work in the community along the River Nairn, tackling some of the species on the river. We'd also do bumble bag fabric workshops where we bring folks together with repurposing old machines and making beautiful and functional items out of them, such as these bumble bags. We've made 300 alternative shopping bags to plastic bags now. And we've worked in care homes, improving the fabric on chairs, for example. But in COVID times, we've had to think differently. So instead of getting people together in groups, we've been supporting people to do things individually that they still love doing in terms of taking environmental action. So we were able to buy new sewing machines and lend those sewing machines out. And then people were able to make different types of bag, or new types of bag. These are some of the items that folks have been making whilst they've been in lockdown. People have made peg bags, for example, shopping bags, and we started to develop an online shop because we couldn't access normal retail in recent months. And we started making scrub bags, for example, that went to the hospital and local care homes, aprons. There's been a whole series of fabric upcycling that's been happening thanks to the starter kits and the machines going out into people's homes. We've also got a community orchard in Nairn, and Green Hive and a series of other partners brought that space together where people can take activity, people can just go and sit and enjoy the space. Or this is the space in the context of a wider park called Viewfield Park. Traditionally, of course, people do a whole host of activities associated with the fruit in the orchard, and just struggling with a clicker again, hang on. This is some of the folks, obviously, prior to COVID, doing some of the planting activities. The benches themselves were made with support from Men's Sheds, who developed the benches for us, and we traditionally do group activities associated with apple pressing, of course. So these are some of the folks out in the space. Also recently we did manage to do a community event around leaf mulching, and these are some of the leaf beds. So as you can see, people take activity in the local area, they populate the leaf beds and then can come back and take leaf mulch for their garden. But just to tell you a little bit more about our workshop hub, this is Andy, who had the task of only in July last year actually, of repurposing an empty workshop space into a community plastics recycling hub. Essentially, we were gifted cupboards and old bits of metal and all sorts of things, and some tools and some boards from a local school, which we repurposed, and with the help of Marley, a mascot, and folks like Plastic at Bay up in Durness, we were able to learn how to process plastic and start making our first items, such as these clocks. Bear with me a second whilst I struggle with the technology. So there's a variety of groups, such as school groups, as well as individuals locally, who have helped us gather plastic. And first of all, of course, as I said, it's folks working on our beach projects have helped us identify that plastics were a problem. Sorry, the slides just need to go forward. If you could help me with the slides. Such as these milk bottles, of course. So we started collecting and receiving milk bottles from the local community. If you can just keep flicking through the slides, that'd be great. So we started developing the Green Hive Community Workshop as a brand, and started receiving machines that we could actually start processing the plastic and repairing old machines. And those machines then ground up the plastic that we took from the milk bottles. These are the lids. And then we took them into pressing machines and heating and pressing, and with the support of volunteers, shaping and sanding down. And so, and there's Alistair and Matthew in the workshop, into these products essentially, which you'll find on our website now, which is on my profile. We've just started these first products, and starting with clocks, but we're also looking at coasters and placemats and bowls, and that's one particular method of upcycling waste plastic that would otherwise end up in landfill. We're also looking at making 3D items, such as plant pots, for example, and we're just starting work on our first items, such as outdoor furniture with plastic benches. So the plastics workshop's come a long way in a short time. If you can continue just skimming through the slides. So there's a whole series of clocks which are going out to different folks through the website. This is what the workshop hub looks like now. A fully populated welfare space, as well as a functioning workshop with tools in it. You can keep going through the slides. These are our starter kit elements. We developed and adapted our group activities into starter kits, so that we could give people litter picking equipment, we could give people the plants, we could give people educational resources, such as this plastic education pack, because people weren't aware that there were different types of plastic. Physical resources that basically help people take individual action in their local community to keep connected to the environment. We're still taking plastic at the workshop. We're now working with Bly's Wood Care, looking to repurpose old children's slides and old children's cars, the toy cars you see in people's gardens. And you can see the development of the workshop here, with a small retail space where we can sell the clocks, an increasing number of tools in the workshop, where folks are supported to come in and learn how to use the tools. Volunteers like Alistair have got pretty proficient at producing the clocks. But now with new machines and new investment in resources at the community workshop, we're hoping to produce a wider range of items, taking more plastic out of landfill essentially, or that's destined for landfill, and making them into beautiful items. At the moment, we're experimenting with things like key rings and coasters, but with bigger and better machinery, really, now that we've learned how to do the process of the plastic and receiving and upcycling that plastic, and people then buying those products. We're hopeful that we can do more and to make the community a happier and stronger place to be. These are the folks from Nairn Community Transport. We did a wonderful project with rubble bags, repurposing them into litter picking bags. They went out into via the community bus into the local community. A wide range of people received those starter kits. Folks living in the community, folks living in sheltered housing, folks living in care homes, and these are some of the elements of the kit. So we've worked hard really with the support of webinars and videos and digital resources to keep individuals engaged in environmental activity. The Community Workshop Hub has come a long way in a short period of time. We're ambitious to do more, and one of the things we'd like to do next year is to develop a high street hub, where the community can come to a space on the high street that would incorporate some educational resources, some of the things that we've shown you, and a retail space as well. So in coming back to Michael Cook's sort of call earlier, we want to do more and we want to do it faster, but we need investment to do that too. But I hope that's given you a brief insight into what we do at Green Hive.
Thank you very much indeed, Neil. You've been busy, and I think for many of our delegates, that's Christmas shopping sorted, actually, looking at your wonderful selection there. Thanks for staying with us and the technology there. And of course, you can post some questions for Neil after and during our next presentation. And next up, we're in our very own capital city with the founder and director of the Edinburgh Tool Library to tell us a bit more about his organisation and what he's been doing. So I'll hand over to Chris Hellawell.
Hello, thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. I think the sort of idea of a fairer, greener Scotland fits very much with our ethos at the Edinburgh Tool Library. Our kind of strategy is about building a library of equipment that people don't necessarily need to own, but need access to occasionally. And by sharing what already exists in our community, it means that we're reducing the cost, but also the environmental impact of that being made and created in the first place, which I'm sure everybody is familiar with the circular economy butterfly diagram, but sharing is the most resource efficient sort of loop of the circular economy butterfly diagram. So just use my technology. This is kind of the bottom line principle of what we do. By sharing tools, it's for people who don't need to own a drill, but they need a hole in the wall to put up a set of shelves or a picture or whatever. So I have a prop here. The average cordless drill is used approximately 13 minutes in total in its lifetime. But every one of those drills, on average, produces 28 kilograms of CO2 throughout its lifetime, and the vast majority of that is to do with its manufacture, the resources used in it. Only 1% is actually anything to do with the charging and the use of the machine. So obviously, 28 kilograms for 13 minutes of use is a bit of a waste. However, by sharing, we have one drill in our inventory which has been borrowed by 130 different people. So if you do your sums, that's around 3.5 tons of CO2 that's saved if each one of those people had gone out and bought the same drill. If you multiply that up, we have about 1,600 tools in our inventory in total, and since we started, have completed over 20,000 loans. So on an economic basis, that equates to £1 million worth of value to our community, to Edinburgh. And that's really what we're about. We're about community. It's about how do we enhance Edinburgh, obviously with a green agenda in there as well. How do we make it fairer whilst also allowing everybody to act greener? And and it sort of ties into what Martin was saying earlier about manipulating change, but then what we want to do is to create that desire for change, but the first step is to actually getting people to act, and what their motivation is initially, I think, probably secondary for us. So there's an environmental aspect, but this community aspect. There's just some photos there of some of the things that we can do with our spaces. We have 2 full woodwork workshops, which are affordable to access for all our members. We charge between £10 and £30 for an annual membership, which is a one-off fee. We don't charge to borrow tools, and people can borrow as much as they want. But we also give them access twice a week to our workshops. To our knowledge, we have between 40 and 50 volunteers at any one time, all of whom, or many of whom, are very familiar and very comfortable with the tools, and others are learning. So there's lots of opportunities to sort of expand people's horizons, learn new tools, but also meet other people, learn new skills. And we have in both workshop spaces, we have allocated time for members, but we also have a specific program for young makers who are starting out on their journey, who maybe can't afford to hire a space or a workshop space, so they get access to our workshops for free when it's not being used, which is sort of ties into the whole ethos of maximizing the usefulness of things, and in this case, a space. We also teach classes. We have a series of night classes that we teach. Obviously not at the moment, but hopefully we will get back to that sometime soon. We have lots of partnerships with other charities in the city, where we work with folks that are being supported by other charities to teach them skills, to make them more employable, to get over confidence barriers. We had our very first, since lockdown, first outdoor making class last week, where we worked with a group of Syrian refugees to build some bird boxes from the RSPB sort of design to put up in their homes or outside of their homes. We also work with organisations such as Sahelia, Hilton Community Health Project, Whale Arts, all sorts of community gardens, local businesses. We have a men's shed that are based in our space, and we also have a women and non-binary makers group every Friday as well. And just in the sort of bottom corner there, we have a photo of one of our programs that we're really proud of, which is the Volunteer Assembly, which is where community groups and charities come to us and they pitch an idea, and our volunteers vote on it and project manage it, and we make things happen. So that's a project from a community garden in Duddingston, who needed a shed for storage and a little potting shed and a sort of space to sell veg that they're growing in the space. So all of that is reclaimed material, some from washed up on the beach, some of it is from the Edinburgh Festival, but there was about 3 or 4 tons of waste wood used in that project, and that all would have gone to landfill. And I think that's really what we're trying to do, is we push the green agenda, but we want to take everybody with us. So some people join us for reasons of saving money, some because they can't afford to get somebody to come out and do a job, and some because they want to just learn and they maybe want to live more sustainably. But I think it's really important to, if we're going to tackle climate change, that we need to take everybody along with us, and that's how we do it at the Edinburgh Tool Library. I shall leave it. If you have more questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but I'll pass back to Heather. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Chris. That was a fantastic oversight of incredibly worthwhile projects that you're running there in Edinburgh, and great to see the statistical information. I think it was David on the chat bar who referenced the great data that you were talking about, obviously after my own heart there, and likes that sort of information. So now we have both Chris and Neil back with us, and I've been keeping an eye on the chat bar because a few questions coming in. I'll maybe start with Neil first. I saw a question there about because obviously you shared a lot of activity with us, which was fantastic. fantastic. And a question asking if you made a conscious decision to run a broad range of activities, or whether it's just developed organically. I suppose maybe some advice for people who aren't sure how to sort of diversify like that in the way that you've done. What's been your approach to that?
Yeah, it's relatively straightforward in many respects, in that we follow the lead set by the community. All the ideas that we've developed have come from individual members of the local area and groups often as well. That the Community Plastics Workshop project, came out of a discussion with folks collecting plastic on the beach. And the new e-bike service and trailer that we've got, that we're going to be turning into a green deliveries project, that similarly came from folks talking about things locally as to what was the problem and what would they like to see happen. Same with the orchard. So it's been less of a conscious decision to do as many different projects as we can, more to follow the lead set by the community. What would you like to see us do, and how can we support more individuals and more groups, whether it's connected directly with us or indirectly to Green Hive, bring about happier places really, and people getting happier in the process. So yeah, it's very much folks would call it asset-based community development, working with the assets that are locally in the community.
Mm-hmm. I think that's brilliant advice, actually, and some really wise thoughts there about a community-driven sort of decision making and ways to tackle some of these issues. I am keeping half an eye on the chat bar here, but Chris, I know you were keen to tease out and develop some of the things Martin was talking about, that idea about manipulating change and inspiring change, and how your organisation has interacted with that. You mentioned it briefly as you were going through, but did you want to just say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think so. The way I kind of see it is that people, I would say probably there's a fairly even split in terms of the reasons behind why people join the Edinburgh Tool Library. Sometimes it's because I think we tend to refer to them as easy greens. People who get the sustainable idea and that we're not having to sort of explain it or push it to them. But there's also a lot of people who are coming along because they are on benefits, or they're unemployed, or they're struggling financially, but they would like to have a front door that opens that doesn't sort of rip up their carpet, or they would like to fix something around the house, and they can't afford somebody to pay somebody to come in and do it for them. They can't afford to go and buy those tools, so they come to the tool library and and they have financially accessible sort of way of doing that, with support, with skill support from us. But perhaps their motivation is or maybe they don't even just think of it as this is me living more sustainably or doing something that's good for the environment. And so I'm not about to tell them what their priority should be, but I think it's really important that once they've taken a step that is positive for the environment, that we sort of say, well done. That might not have been why, let's reinforce that, so that maybe you don't take your recycling out as often as you should, but maybe now you've done this perhaps bigger step, then let's reinforce that. So that we're that there's probably people who are members of the Tool Library who don't believe in climate change, and I probably shouldn't be saying that here, but I think that in being a member of the Tool Library, whether they like it or not, whether they believe it or not, they are taking steps that will benefit the environment, and that's the first step. And maybe working with us will create and help them understand that, and then create that desire for change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I think that idea about that sort of multi-strand approach in terms of understanding people's the drivers, so you then can take it to the next level is a really important message for all of us. And Neil, coming back to you, because I know that you obviously Doug's presentation was very linked to what you were sharing with us today, and it was so inspiring. And I know that you're also keen to explore how exactly, whether it's your organisation or all of us, build capacity around the whole plastics challenge in what you're doing. I mean, I think I jotted down 300 bags in lockdown, was it? Or that's a lot. But what are your thoughts around that building capacity challenge?
Yeah, this is where I think as a collective we might begin to address the problem, because there's a problem of scale, isn't there? And we're a relatively small, relatively new project that's trying to tackle these challenges by doing something positive, whether it's making plastic clocks or plastic benches or fabric bags. We've made about 50 clocks now. We're just starting on 2 new benches, but and the benches will take quite a bit of plastic. In terms of the kilograms of weight that will go into a bench. But in order for us to do that effectively, it would be better if there were other organisations doing that across Scotland. It would be better if there was a plastics market. Us sourcing different types of plastic to make the benches from, for example, has been a problem. We've been able to do that, but delivery to the Highlands, as is traditionally a problem, has been more expensive. And, the supply and demand, the marketplace for plastics upcycling is in its infancy. And we're pretty unique in that we're developing plastic products from plastic that would otherwise go to landfill, using community volunteers as the central tenet of how that is operated. We'd like to see other community organisations do similar things, so that we can work together, as a group of organisations trying to tackle the problem. We can then, not only can we work together on whether we shred plastic or whether somebody else forms plastic or whether we club together and sell it in one marketplace, and all the various different considerations that are required from an emerging marketplace around plastic. We want to see grow, really, and we're keen to play our part in that. So if people are interested, they just need to drop us a line and get in touch.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for vocalizing that, and I think there's definitely there's an appetite for that kind of approach, and this is ideally the umbrella organisation to help you with that and to facilitate it. I was going to ask you, because obviously we had our government minister at the start. I was going to ask you about support, and if there's one thing, I suppose, that we could lobby for or help with, in terms of government policy or initiatives. What would best support your organisations going forward as we recover from COVID, but still address the climate emergency? Chris, is there anything that you have in particular that would really would help?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things I would, before I go into what we would be after, I think it's important to say that I think there's a couple of times people were saying Scotland is, way ahead, and I think Scotland's at the front of a field, but I think it's at the front of a field that is way behind where it should be. I think let's not sort of slap ourselves on the back just because we're the best of a variety of different nations. I think we really need to keep being ambitious and keep pushing that. And not not rest on our laurels. But in terms of, I actually think, just tying in with COVID, I think there's an awareness, and there's a sort of, I think it's been a bit of a kick up the backside, and I think people are thinking about the environment and how their interactions with it. This is a sort of direct cost of of our attitude towards the environment, and I think I've certainly felt that there's a willingness and a need and a want to understand how people can live more sustainably out of this. And I think the idea of resources, as there's unemployment's growing and will continue to grow, and money that has been allocated else or for other things is not there anymore. We have to start thinking more efficiently, as governments, as local authorities, as organisations, and things like sharing libraries where the assets already exist. I think that's really important to really sort of highlight, is that we aren't buying new tools. We are getting hold of things that already exist in our community and are making them available to the community. And that kind of attitude, I'm not necessarily saying that everybody needs to do exactly the same as us, but that kind of thing of making the most of what we already have instead of making more is the way that we can get through that. But it will also help with recovery from COVID-19.
Yeah, no, I think those are incredibly important issues to keep at the forefront, as you say. And I think I also see a comment coming through here from Terry regarding the deposit return scheme, and how that could possibly affect you as well. Neil, what do you think going forward, looking at that sort of whole environment, I suppose, wrong word, but that whole sphere? There's a deposit return scheme that the government's very promoting. What changes could happen, and what do you think of that in the context of your organisation?
Yeah, I think there's a sort of a general point and a specific point. I think the general point, I think, is coming back to the survey results from CRNS. It's not surprising that finance, funding, and staffing were top of the list of problems. Community solutions like ours and like many others across the network need to be sustainable. They need to be sustainable financially. They need to be able to realise their ambitions and grow. In recent times, there's been a variety of funding approaches taken during COVID times, which has been sort of an emergency response initially, and then has become possibly not as coordinated as it could have been. But I think looking ahead, central government, local government, and funding organisations, grant-giving trusts and foundations primarily, do need to work more closely together as to how organisations are going to sustain themselves in this different world, and that goes through financial sustainability as well as sustaining the activities themselves that socially benefit communities, that benefit the environment. We'll be looking at the new plastic initiatives that come from government, but without the specific longer term flexible funding support underpinning most of these community groups, I worry about the future of some of them. And so I think that's one thing. I think that perhaps on behalf of the network, we can lobby, central government. We can, work with local partners to support our politicians and our policymakers to understand how important community reuse is. Because without the staff, without the financing and the funding of these organisations, they aren't able to do the work, whether it's to take up a new bottle plastic project or not. We need staffing and support financially, and we got the support of the community and of people socially and locally, but it needs to, I think, a more flexible, longer term funding scenario needs to emerge.
Yeah, well, I think certainly resonating with quite a few of the delegates here today, and they've all found your presentations incredibly interesting, informative, and hopefully will also spark some new partnerships and some new conversations as we go through. There is the networking facility as part of the conference, which I think has been well used today, and hopefully again tomorrow morning it will be well used. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your contributions today, for showcasing what are two incredibly important projects, especially under our Greener World theme today. So thank you very much indeed to both of you, and on behalf of all the delegates who have commented here, those were fantastic presentations, and we really appreciate you sharing with us. Chris and Neil, thank you. So, well, that's us nearly at the end of what has been, I'm sure you'll agree, a brilliant morning. Thank you to all of our speakers way back when Rosanna Cunningham started things off for us and giving us that important Scottish and government context, which is a running theme really around that sustainable financial viability challenge with climate and COVID as our two crises of the moment, and of course looking further into the future. And something I want to talk tomorrow a little bit more about is how the climate emergency is still very, very with us and will be for a long time, as hopefully we start to initiate a green recovery from our COVID-19 pandemic this year and into next. And then what can I say about the amazing Doug Allen for such an informed and passionate global perspective? Really reminded us all of some of the impacts of climate breakdown, but also provided ideas and a brilliant discussion forum online in terms of solutions. And thank you very much for everybody who participated in that. A big thank you also to Michael and Martin for further developing our key themes with us this morning of a fairer Scotland and a greener world. We did have some excellent discussions, I'm sure you'll agree, around hope, but also around the importance of investment within our sector and the positive dialogue that's needed during this future decade to deliver. And about how we shouldn't lose sight completely of the fact that here in Scotland we are world leaders in reducing carbon emissions. And of course we also had that important statistic from Michael about how CRNS members have saved the same amount of emissions as 40,000 cars, which is a tremendous contribution. And we all really appreciate and need to talk, I think, a bit more about. And that's what really these 2 days have been about. It's an opportunity to showcase the contribution that members have been making throughout the year. Not forgetting the brilliant breakout sessions that we had with Anne, Sarah and Naomi. We've had some great feedback about these sessions too. We really appreciate all the work and effort that went into providing them online. And finally there with our CRNS members, Neil and Chris, showcasing some of the amazing impacts you're making. I hope you've also found time to enjoy the marketplace and the networking. Thank you to all of our exhibitors who have made that possible and will make it possible again tomorrow morning. And of course to Cameron Live for making it all work so well. I think it's gone brilliantly, much better than a BBC weather forecast. And the graphics in my day, I can tell you, it's been a revelation. But more seriously, I know that the pandemic, the climate emergency and our green recovery are really serious subjects. But I think this morning we have collectively shown that here in Scotland, not only are we incredibly resilient, but we also understand that through pursuing the right kind of recovery, we have the potential to arrive at a greener world and a fairer Scotland. And I'm sure you'd agree, it's these types of events with these types of discussions and interactions which will make it happen, will continue to make that happen. I think that's been a point made by all of our speakers, and also more importantly by so many members through the interaction that we've had online and through the members that we've spoken to as part of these discussions today. So a big thank you to all of our delegates, to all of the participants. Thank you so much for engaging with the new virtual format. I think it's gone brilliantly well. I've really enjoyed it, and I've certainly learned a lot, as I always do at CRNS events. So thank you to everybody who's been involved. Look forward to speaking to you all again tomorrow. Until then, from the whole CRNS team, goodbye for now.